Matthias, the apostle of divine choice, stands as a testament to the mysterious ways of God. In a time of turmoil, after the shadow of betrayal had fallen upon the early disciples, the circle of apostles was incomplete. A space remained, a vacancy that would be filled not by ambition, wealth, or prominence, but by the hand of divine providence. Born in humble circumstances, Matthias lived an ordinary life among ordinary people. Yet within him stirred a spirit of faith, patience, and quiet devotion. Though unseen and unheralded by the world, his heart remained steadfast and his soul open to the calling of God. His story is not marked by dramatic miracles or loud proclamations, but by a deeper, subtler power, the power of being chosen for a purpose beyond oneself. When the apostles prayed and cast lots to discern God's will, it was Matthias who emerged, a living symbol that greatness often rises from humility, and that divine choice does not follow the logic of human expectation. His selection reminds us that in the tapestry of history, ordinary threads can carry extraordinary weight when guided by divine hands. This narrative invites you to walk alongside Matthias, to witness the unfolding of the early Christian community through his eyes, and to explore the profound lessons of faith, humility, and obedience. Here is the story of a man chosen not for glory, but for service, a man whose life illuminates the quiet, unwavering power of those who answer God's call. Chapter 1. The Ordinary Life. Matthias was a man of quiet beginnings, born into a world that offered no special acclaim or notable position. His home was modest, his family ordinary, and his days filled with the simple tasks that define the life of a common man. Yet, beneath the surface of this unassuming existence, a spirit of steadfast faith and integrity quietly grew. Even in his earliest years, those who knew him spoke of a man attentive to the needs of others, a listener, a helper, someone whose character reflected humility and care more than ambition or recognition. He walked among his neighbors with a gentle presence, moving through marketplaces and fields with a sense of purpose that seemed invisible to most. While others sought fame, fortune, or influence, Matthias cultivated patience, reflection, and devotion. He listened to the teachings of the elders, absorbed the stories of faith, and allowed them to shape his understanding of life, justice, and service. In his heart, a seed of steadfastness was planted, though its full purpose was not yet revealed. Despite living an ordinary life, Matthias was attentive to the small signs of God's hand in the world around him. He saw beauty in the quiet rhythm of nature, in acts of kindness, in moments of sincere prayer and reflection. These small observations, unnoticed by many, nurtured a deep sense of readiness, an inner alignment with a calling that would one day reach beyond his comprehension. Matthias' character was marked by balance, humility coupled with courage, patience alongside a keen mind, and a natural inclination toward justice and service. These qualities, ordinary as they might have seemed at first glance, were the foundation of something extraordinary. They were the qualities that would prepare him to step into the circle of the apostles, to take his place among men who had walked with Jesus, and to embrace a destiny chosen not by human desire, but by divine will. In this quiet, humble life, we begin to see the first threads of a story that will rise far beyond the ordinary, a tale of faith rewarded, a selection guided by God, and of a man whose life reminds us that greatness often begins in silence, patience, and unseen devotion. Chapter 2. A time of turmoil. The shadow of betrayal had fallen over the apostles. Judas Iscariot's treachery left more than sorrow. It left a gap, a fracture in the circle of those who had walked closely with Jesus. The loss was not merely numerical. It was a wound to the spirit of the community. Confusion, grief, and uncertainty spread among the disciples as they struggled to comprehend the depth of what had occurred. Questions hung heavy in the air. How could one so trusted turn so completely? How could faith endure amidst such treachery? In this fragile moment, the apostles were faced with a daunting responsibility: to restore their number to heal the community, and to ensure that the mission of spreading Jesus' teachings could continue unbroken. It was a task that required not ambition, but discernment, not haste, but careful reflection. The search for a new member was not simply about filling a seat among 12. It was about maintaining the spiritual integrity and unity of a fledgling movement that would soon reach far beyond Jerusalem. The apostles gathered together in prayer, seeking guidance, leaning on their shared faith, and listening for the whisper of divine will. They reflected on the qualities required: loyalty, steadfastness, humility, and a heart aligned with God's purpose. The weight of this decision was immense. It was not a choice to be made lightly, for the one selected would carry the responsibility of representing the teachings of Christ, serving as a witness to his life, and continuing the work of a movement that would shape history. Amid this uncertainty, the world seemed to pause. The apostles' prayers filled the room, echoing the hope that God's guidance would illuminate the path. Each disciple felt the tension between loss and hope, grief and faith. It was in this crucible of turmoil that the extraordinary could emerge from the ordinary, that divine choice could manifest where human judgment might fail. And so, in the shadow of betrayal, the stage was set. A humble man, unnoticed by most, was about to be called to a role far greater than his quiet life had ever suggested. The turmoil of the moment was the prelude to a divine selection, a turning point where faith, patience, and humility would be recognized and elevated by God's will. Matthias' moment was near, and with it, a story of quiet courage and faithful service was about to begin. Chapter 3: Prayer and Selection. As the apostles gathered in the upper room, a sense of solemnity filled the air. The grief of Judas' betrayal still lingered, yet a quiet determination took root. They understood that their mission must continue, that the circle of 12 could not remain incomplete. But who could step into this sacred role? How could they be certain that the one chosen would embody the faith, loyalty, and humility required to carry forward the teachings of Christ? In that moment, prayer became their anchor. They knelt, hands clasped, eyes closed, hearts lifted toward the heavens. They sought guidance not from their own judgment or desires, but from God, trusting that divine wisdom would illuminate the path. Each apostle reflected on the qualities necessary for this new companion: steadfastness and faith, unwavering integrity, and a spirit aligned with the will of God. The decision was not theirs alone. It was a moment to surrender to a higher calling. Casting lots, an ancient practice of discernment, became the instrument of divine choice. Names were written, lots prepared, and the apostles waited in reverent silence. The air was thick with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing the gravity of the moment. In the quiet of the room, they felt the presence of something greater than themselves, a guiding hand that would not falter. It was a profound act of trust, to let go of human certainty and place the outcome entirely in God's hands. When the lot fell in favor of Matthias, a mixture of awe and humility filled the room. The apostles recognized that this was not merely chance, it was divine will. Matthias, the humble man who had lived his life quietly, devoted to faith and service, was now chosen to step into a role that would shape the early church. His heart must have raced, a mixture of astonishment, reverence, and the quiet acceptance of a responsibility far greater than anything he had imagined. This moment marked a turning point. Through prayer, trust, and surrender, the apostles had witnessed the mysterious ways of God. The ordinary life of a faithful man was about to intersect with a divine purpose, and the path of Matthias would now become entwined with the unfolding story of the apostles. It was a reminder that God's choices often defy human expectation, lifting the humble and steady-hearted to heights they could never have sought on their own. Chapter 4: Chosen by Divine Will. The moment had arrived. Matthias, once a man of quiet devotion and humble routine, now stood at the threshold of destiny. The casting of lots had revealed what the apostles had sought through prayer and reflection: divine selection. This was not a choice made by human favor, wealth, or status. It was a choice guided by God's mysterious hand, elevating the humble to a position of profound responsibility and honor. As the apostles looked upon Matthias, there was a mixture of wonder, respect, and solemnity. They saw in him the embodiment of faith, integrity, and readiness, qualities nurtured in a life that had seemed ordinary but had been quietly preparing for this extraordinary moment. The significance of the selection was clear. God's ways are often hidden from human eyes, and greatness often arises from those who least expect it. Matthias' own heart must have been a whirl of emotion, astonishment, humility, and a deep awareness of the responsibility now entrusted to him. To be chosen was not simply to join the apostles as a replacement for Judas. It was to accept a role that required unwavering faith, courage, and the wisdom to serve others without seeking personal glory. His life, once marked by quiet service, would now carry the weight of divine purpose. The selection also sent a powerful message to the community of believers, that God sees the hearts of men, not their outward appearance, and that those who live faithfully, even in obscurity, may be called to extraordinary tasks. In Matthias, the early church witnessed the mystery of divine choice, the lifting of the humble, the preparation of a servant for a mission greater than any human could orchestrate. As he was welcomed among the apostles, Matthias felt the gravity of his calling, yet also a sense of peace. He understood that this was not about personal ambition, but about aligning his will with God's, about serving a mission far larger than himself. The ordinary had become extraordinary, the humble elevated, and a new chapter in the story of the apostles began. Through Matthias, the quiet power of faith, obedience, and humility would illuminate the path of the early church and leave an enduring lesson for generations to come. Chapter 5. Acceptance and Responsibility. Stepping fully into his new role, Matthias felt the weight of the apostleship settle upon his shoulders. It was a weight that carried both honor and duty, a responsibility far greater than any ordinary life could have prepared him for. Every glance from the other apostles, every shared moment in prayer and teaching, reminded him that he was now part of something larger, a mission to carry the message of Christ and guide a fledgling community of believers. In these early days, Matthias observed and learned. He listened closely to the experiences of the other apostles, hearing stories of their journeys with Jesus, the miracles they had witnessed, and the teachings that had shaped their faith. He absorbed their wisdom with humility, knowing that understanding and service were earned through patience and devotion, not position or recognition. The lessons were not always easy. He had to navigate unfamiliar responsibilities, balance the needs of the group, and confront the expectations that accompanied his selection. Yet in this challenge, Matthias discovered the true honor of being chosen. It was not the applause of the crowd or the visibility of leadership that defined his role. It was the quiet impact of faithful service, the unwavering commitment to God's will, and the courage to act with integrity even when no one was watching. Each day, he became more attuned to the rhythms of the group, more sensitive to the needs of the community, and more confident in his ability to serve without seeking personal gain. Through this period of adjustment, Matthias also learned that responsibility is inseparable from humility. To lead is not to dominate. To guide is not to control. In serving alongside the apostles, he discovered the profound truth that divine purpose often asks for selflessness, patience, and a willingness to be molded by God's will. The lessons of his ordinary life, faithfulness, quiet devotion, and attentiveness, became the foundation upon which he could now build his extraordinary service. As Matthias embraced his role, he began to see the deeper meaning of being chosen. He was a bridge between the divine plan and the human world, a reminder that God's selection often falls upon those who least seek it but are most ready to receive it. In the honor of apostleship, he found not pride, but purpose, not recognition, but the fulfillment of a calling that would shape both his life and the destiny of the early church. Chapter 6. Witness to the early church. Matthias quickly became a living presence within the first Christian community, a witness not only to the teachings of Jesus, but to the way faith was being transformed into action. The apostles and early disciples gathered in homes, in courtyards, and wherever they could, sharing meals, prayers, and stories of the miracles they had seen. In these moments, Matthias observed the delicate balance between devotion and practicality, between spiritual fervor and the simple acts of service that kept the community alive and united. He took part in the daily rhythms of this fledgling church, offering guidance, support, and encouragement to those who sought the comfort of faith. He listened to the struggles of the poor, the sick, and the weary, learning that ministry was not only about words and teachings, but about presence and compassion. Through these interactions, Matthias realized that the apostles' mission extended far beyond their own circle. It was a mission of inclusion, mercy, and unyielding hope. Witnessing these acts of shared faith and fellowship, Matthias also learned the power of example. Leadership in this community was not about status, titles, or recognition. It was about embodying the principles of Christ in every action, about inspiring others through integrity and humility. Every meal shared, every prayer lifted, every hand extended in service was a testament to the transformative power of faith when lived fully and authentically. Yet, even amid the harmony and devotion, challenges emerged. Differences of opinion, moments of doubt, and the pressures of external persecution tested the cohesion of the group. Through it all, Matthias' presence served as a stabilizing force, a reminder that God's hand guided even the smallest acts of kindness, and that a faithful heart could illuminate the path through uncertainty. He understood that his role was not to dominate or command, but to serve, witness, and strengthen the bonds that held the community together. By participating so fully, Matthias found himself both shaped and defined by the early church. He was no longer simply an ordinary man. He had become part of a living, breathing testament to God's plan. His story, intertwined with the apostles and the first followers of Christ, will be remembered not for grandeur or fame, but for the quiet devotion and steadfast faith that enabled the early church to grow, endure, and carry forward the light of a new covenant into the world. Chapter 7. The Spirit of the Apostles. Matthias watched closely as the apostles carried out their mission, each act a lesson in faith, courage, and devotion. He observed the way Peter spoke with authority yet humility, how John offered comfort and compassion, and how the others moved with a quiet strength that inspired those around them. Through these examples, Matthias began to understand the deeper meaning of apostleship. It was not simply about following, but about embodying the teachings of Christ in thought, word, and action. The miracles he witnessed were awe-inspiring, moments that defied human understanding and revealed the boundless power of God's will. He saw the blind receive sight, the sick restored to health, and the oppressed comforted through acts of divine intervention. Yet beyond the wonder, Matthias understood that the true spirit of the apostles lay in their humility and unwavering faith. Each miracle was paired with service, each act of power guided by love and obedience to God. Through daily life alongside the apostles, Matthias learned that leadership required patience, empathy, and discernment. He noticed how they counseled one another, resolved conflicts, and nurtured the fledgling community. Their unity was not without effort. It was forged through dedication, prayer, and an enduring commitment to the mission they had been given. Matthias saw that to be an apostle was to be a vessel of God's Spirit, a beacon of hope in a world often shadowed by doubt and fear. The experiences of these days shaped Matthias profoundly. He began to internalize the lessons of courage, devotion, and moral integrity, understanding that true greatness is measured not by power or recognition, but by the capacity to serve others faithfully. He felt inspired to grow, to contribute, and to rise to the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that God's guidance would always illuminate the path for those who seek to serve with pure hearts. In observing and learning from the apostles, Matthias was not merely a witness. he was becoming a participant in the living legacy of Christ's mission. Each moment strengthened his resolve and deepened his understanding of what it meant to live as an apostle, preparing him to face trials, spread the message of faith, and uphold the teachings of Christ with unwavering dedication. Chapter 8. Faith in Action. Matthias embraced his new role with a deep sense of purpose. No longer merely a witness to the apostles' work, he began to engage directly with the community, offering both guidance and support to those seeking the light of faith. He visited homes where families gathered, sharing meals and prayers, listening to their struggles, and offering comfort through gentle words and acts of service. Each encounter was a chance to spread hope and to demonstrate the living presence of God in everyday life. He traveled alongside the other apostles to towns and villages, observing how their words inspired courage in the weary and strengthened the hearts of the downtrodden. Matthias himself began to speak with growing confidence, recounting the teachings of Jesus, explaining the miracles he had seen, and helping people find understanding and solace in the message of love and redemption. He realized that faith was not simply a matter of belief. It was a living force that required action, patience, and compassion. Through these efforts, Matthias discovered that service was as much about humility as it was about courage. He healed the divisions within families, reconciled friends in conflict, and encouraged the poor and marginalized to embrace the teachings of Christ. At times, he faced resistance or skepticism, and the weight of expectation sometimes felt overwhelming. Yet he turned to prayer and reflection, finding strength in the quiet moments and guidance in the teachings of Jesus. Each challenge became a test of his perseverance, a chance to deepen his understanding of what it truly meant to be an apostle. Matthias also began to take initiative in organizing the community's daily life. He helped distribute food, ensured the sick were cared for, and led small gatherings of prayer and study. His actions inspired others to join in, creating a ripple effect of service and devotion. He saw that leadership was not about authority or recognition, but about living as an example of Christ's love and helping others discover that same love in their own hearts. Even in moments of doubt, Matthias' resolve grew stronger. He observed how each small act of kindness, each word of encouragement, could bring light to those surrounded by darkness. Through these experiences, he internalized a profound truth. True faith manifests in deeds, in the courage to serve without expectation, and in the steadfast commitment to uphold the teachings of Christ no matter the obstacles. By the end of each day, Matthias felt a growing sense of fulfillment and responsibility. He was no longer simply a new apostle learning from others. He was becoming a beacon of faith himself. Each person he touched, each life he influenced, strengthened the bonds of the early church and ensured that the message of Christ would continue to spread, alive in the hearts of all who encountered it. Chapter 9. Trials and Temptations. As Matthias continued his journey as an apostle, he soon realized that stepping into this extraordinary role was not without its trials. Every day presented challenges that tested his faith, his patience, and his resolve. He witnessed the suffering of the poor and the sick, felt the weight of responsibility for guiding new believers, and faced the quiet temptations of doubt that lingered in moments of solitude. The path of an apostle, he discovered, was as demanding as it was sacred. Temptation often came in subtle forms. Matthias sometimes wondered if his contributions truly mattered, if he was worthy of the mission entrusted to him. He observed the other apostles, each seemingly confident and unwavering, and could not help but compare himself, questioning whether he could ever live up to their example. Yet in these moments of self-doubt, he turned to prayer, seeking guidance and strength from God, remembering that even the humble are chosen for divine purposes. The trials extended beyond personal struggles. He encountered skepticism and resistance from those he sought to help. Some questioned the teachings he carried, others resisted change, and a few mocked the apostles' mission altogether. Matthias had to learn patience, discernment, and the courage to respond not with anger or frustration, but with compassion and steadfastness. Each encounter became a lesson, shaping his understanding of leadership, faith, and the human heart. There were moments when fear threatened to cloud his judgment. Traveling to distant towns, confronting sickness, or facing hostility from those opposed to the message of Christ could have shaken anyone's resolve. Yet Matthias drew strength from the unity of the apostles and the shared belief that their mission was guided by a higher power. He realized that trials were not punishments, but opportunities to deepen his faith, to strengthen his spirit, and to embody the teachings of Jesus more fully. Matthias also experienced moments of internal temptation, ambition, pride, or the desire for recognition. He reflected on these feelings honestly, acknowledging them without allowing them to control his actions. He learned that true apostleship demanded selflessness, a heart devoted to service rather than personal gain, and the courage to act with integrity even when unseen or unappreciated. By facing these challenges head-on, Matthias grew into his role. Each trial refined him. Each temptation tested his dedication, and each doubt, once confronted and surrendered to God, reinforced his commitment to the mission. He began to understand that the life of an apostle was a journey of constant learning, moral courage, and unwavering faith, where the greatest triumphs were often invisible, lived quietly in acts of love and devotion. Through struggles and temptations, Matthias discovered his inner strength, the resilience of his spirit, and the profound truth that even the humblest of hearts can carry the extraordinary light of God's purpose. Chapter 10. Moments of Reflection. Amid the constant activity of spreading faith and serving the community, Matthias found moments of quiet reflection. These were the hours when the sun dipped low, when the chatter of the villages faded, and the apostles gathered in prayer or sat alone in thought. It was in these times that Matthias contemplated the journey he had undertaken, the choices he had made, and the divine guidance that had brought him to this extraordinary role. He thought of his life before being chosen, of the ordinary routines, the simplicity of his humble origins, and how far he had come. There was a sense of awe in realizing that God's hand had guided him from the shadows of anonymity into the center of a mission that shaped the hearts of countless people. Yet with awe came humility. Matthias knew that any skill, courage, or wisdom he possessed was granted, not earned, and that the path of an apostle was not a privilege for pride, but a responsibility for service. In these reflective moments, he examined his heart. He acknowledged his fears, his doubts, and the moments of impatience or frustration that had crept in. He asked himself whether he was living in accordance with the teachings of Christ, whether his actions were truly selfless, and whether he could offer the light of faith to others without dimming it with his own imperfections. These questions were not sources of despair, but catalysts for growth, urging him to align his thoughts, words, and deeds with the divine purpose entrusted to him. Matthias also reflected on the power of the apostles' fellowship. Observing the unity, support, and shared devotion of the group, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that the journey was not one of solitary heroism, but of collective faith. Each conversation, shared meal, and prayer strengthened not only his spirit, but the bonds that held the community together. Even in the quietest moments, he sensed that the mission's strength depended on this interconnected devotion. These reflections often led Matthias to prayer, a dialogue with God in which he poured out both fears and hopes. He asked for wisdom to guide others, for courage to face unknown challenges, and for patience to endure hardships without faltering. He found that in these conversations, the clarity of purpose emerged, and the quiet assurance of divine presence settled within him, offering both comfort and direction. Through contemplation, Matthias deepened his understanding of humility, the weight of responsibility, and the subtle yet profound ways God worked through him. He learned to embrace silence as a teacher, reflection as a guide, and faith as an unwavering companion. Each moment of reflection strengthened his resolve to serve faithfully, to lead with compassion, and to live as a humble instrument of God's will, aware that even in ordinary acts, the extraordinary could be revealed. Chapter 11. Strength and Humility. Matthias' humble beginnings had always been a quiet strength within him. Born into simplicity, accustomed to the struggles of daily life, he understood the value of patience, hard work, and genuine care for others. These early experiences shaped not only his character, but his approach to apostleship. Unlike those who might seek glory or recognition, Matthias carried himself with a quiet confidence rooted in service, aware that true greatness was found in humility rather than ambition. As he walked alongside the other apostles, he saw how the lessons of his upbringing became essential tools in guiding the community. He listened more than he spoke, offering counsel only when it could uplift or clarify. When disputes arose among believers, or when the weary questioned their faith, Matthias' modest demeanor created a space of trust and calm. People felt seen and valued, not judged or lectured, and this gentle influence allowed the teachings of Christ to take root more deeply in their hearts. His humble perspective also protected him from the temptations that challenged even the most devoted apostles. Pride, envy, or desire for authority rarely swayed Matthias because he had learned to measure worth not by status, but by deeds and integrity. He approached leadership as a sacred duty, a call to serve rather than to command, understanding that the smallest acts of kindness often bore the greatest spiritual fruit. At times, Matthias faced situations that tested this humility. He witnessed others praise for miraculous deeds, or he saw his own efforts overlooked, unnoticed by the crowd. Yet instead of resentment, he embraced patience and gratitude, finding satisfaction in knowing that his work contributed to a larger divine purpose. Every act of service, whether tending to the sick, comforting the grieving, or teaching the faithful, reinforced his understanding that humility was not weakness, but a source of enduring strength. Matthias also reflected on the contrast between his past and present life. The simplicity of his early days had prepared him for the complexities of ministry, grounding him in empathy and practical wisdom. He recognized that the lessons learned in ordinary life, the value of perseverance, compassion, and integrity, were indispensable in extraordinary service. This awareness allowed him to remain centered, even amidst the challenges and expectations of apostleship, and to lead by example rather than by proclamation. Through humility, Matthias inspired others to act selflessly and to embrace their own roles in building a faithful community. He demonstrated that greatness does not require grandeur, that influence flows naturally from empathy and devotion, and that even the most ordinary life, when aligned with divine purpose, can touch countless hearts. In every humble gesture, Matthias became a living testament to the truth that God often chooses the meek to perform extraordinary works, illuminating the path of faith with quiet but unwavering light. Chapter 12. The Legacy of Choice. Matthias' story stands as a testament to the mysterious ways in which God chooses those who will carry out his work. From the moment he was selected to replace Judas, his life became a living example of how divine wisdom can elevate the humble and transform ordinary people into instruments of extraordinary purpose. The casting of lots, the quiet prayer of the apostles, and the subsequent acceptance of his role all reflected a truth that transcended human understanding. God's choices often follow paths that seem unexpected, yet they reveal a deeper design. Throughout his life as an apostle, Matthias embodied the principles of faithfulness, humility, and service. Each decision he made, each act of compassion, and each lesson he shared with the early Christian community became part of a legacy that would endure beyond his own years. He demonstrated that greatness is not measured by power or fame, but by steadfast devotion to a higher calling, by the willingness to serve without expectation of reward, and by the courage to embrace responsibilities that others might shy away from. Matthias also reminded the apostles and the faithful that leadership is not a matter of human ambition, but of divine appointment. His presence highlighted that God often works through those who are overlooked or underestimated, choosing hearts that are pure and spirits that are willing. In his quiet dedication, Matthias exemplified the principle that the measure of one's life is found not in recognition or applause, but in fidelity to the mission entrusted by God. The lessons of Matthias' life echo across generations. He taught that challenges are opportunities for growth, that humility is a source of strength, and that the ordinary can be extraordinary when aligned with divine purpose. By observing his conduct, others were inspired to embrace their own callings, to serve faithfully in whatever capacity they could, and to trust that God's guidance often appears in the most unexpected ways. Ultimately, Matthias' legacy is a reminder that God's selection is not about the qualifications humans value, but about the potential to carry out His will with integrity, love, and unwavering faith. His life encourages all who hear his story to remain steadfast, to embrace their own paths of service, and to recognize that even the simplest actions, when guided by divine purpose, can leave an indelible mark on the world. Chapter 13. Faith amidst the Apostles. As Matthias continued his journey alongside the other apostles, he witnessed the unfolding of the church's mission with a profound sense of devotion and awe. Every teaching, every miracle, and every act of faith reinforced the purpose that had been entrusted to him. He observed how the apostles faced opposition, endured hardship, and spread the message of Christ with courage, and he learned from their examples, absorbing lessons that would guide his own conduct. Despite the challenges and uncertainties, Matthias' faith remained steadfast. He understood that his role was not only to participate, but also to bear witness through quiet strength and unwavering devotion. While some apostles were called to speak publicly and perform acts that drew attention, Matthias often led by example, showing humility in service, patience in moments of conflict, and compassion in every interaction. He also saw the importance of unity among the apostles. Differences of opinion, moments of doubt, and personal struggles were present. Yet the collective faith and commitment to God's plan created a bond that sustained them through trials. Matthias learned that faith is not a solitary journey, but a shared path, strengthened by community, dialogue, and mutual support. In observing the apostles, Matthias found inspiration to deepen his own spiritual life. Prayer became his constant companion, reflection his guide, and service his expression of faith. He realized that even when his deeds were silent and unnoticed, they contributed to a greater whole, forming a foundation upon which the early church could grow. Through this period of close fellowship, Matthias' understanding of divine purpose and human responsibility expanded. He saw that faith is not merely belief, but action, faith enacted through service, humility, and dedication. By aligning his life with this principle, Matthias became both a participant and a witness to the miraculous unfolding of the early Christian mission, embodying the quiet yet powerful presence of those chosen by God to guide and sustain his work. Chapter 14. Enduring Witness. Matthias' life became a silent testament to steadfast faith and unwavering dedication. Though not as prominently remembered as some of the other apostles, his contributions left an indelible mark on the early Christian community. Through his quiet service, he reinforced the message that true discipleship is measured not by public acclaim, but by the consistency of one's actions and the integrity of one's heart. He continued to support the apostles in spreading the teachings of Christ, witnessing the challenges they faced and the growth of the fledgling church. Each act of encouragement, each gesture of humility, and each example of faithful obedience contributed to a living legacy that inspired others to follow the path of devotion. Matthias demonstrated that even the most ordinary individuals, when chosen by God, could serve extraordinary purposes. The early Christian community saw in him a model of perseverance. While others might have been swayed by fear, envy, or personal ambition, Matthias remained steadfast, embodying the ideals of service, compassion, and unwavering faith. His quiet presence offered reassurance and stability in times of uncertainty, reminding the apostles and the faithful that the strength of the church was built not only on grand gestures, but but also on the everyday acts of love, patience, and dedication. Matthias' enduring witness extended beyond his immediate actions. He showed that humility, obedience, and consistent devotion have the power to influence generations. Even when his name was not the most celebrated, his life testified to the profound impact of a soul fully committed to God's will. He became a living example that the measure of one's life is not in recognition, but in faithful service and the ability to inspire others to embrace their own divine calling. Through his enduring witness, Matthias reminded all who followed that the power of faith lies in quiet steadfastness, that true greatness is rooted in humility, and that God's selection, however mysterious, equips the faithful to fulfill extraordinary purposes. His life continues to shine as a beacon, illustrating that devotion, integrity, and a humble heart leave a legacy that echoes across time. Chapter 15: Echoes of Humility. As we reflect on the life of Matthias, we are reminded of the quiet power of humility and faithful service. His story shows that God's choices often fall upon the unexpected, the overlooked, and the ordinary, transforming them into instruments of extraordinary purpose. Matthias' journey teaches us that greatness is not defined by fame or recognition, but by steadfast devotion, integrity, and the courage to serve selflessly. Through every act of compassion, every moment of guidance, and every silent gesture of support, Matthias left a legacy that continues to inspire. He exemplified how a humble heart can influence countless lives, how quiet perseverance can strengthen communities, and how unwavering faith can illuminate the path even amidst uncertainty. His life is a mirror reflecting the potential within each of us to fulfill our own unique calling, no matter how small or unnoticed it may seem. As we close this chapter of his story, let us carry forward the lessons Matthias offers: to embrace humility, to trust in divine guidance, and to act with integrity and love in all that we do. By following his example, we honor not only his life, but the enduring message that faith, service, and devotion are the truest measures of a meaningful life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Matthias. Your curiosity, your faith, and your dedication to learning more about the apostles help keep these stories alive. We are grateful for your support and invite you to continue exploring the remarkable lives of those chosen to carry forward the light of Christ.